This is When Science Speaks, a new web series profiling innovative and interesting people working in science and technical fields, from academia to industry to the nonprofit world. We explore how to be a powerhouse advocate for science and your research, how to advance your career in meaningful ways that make you happy, and how to push back on the ongoing assault on science and other related issues of interest happening in the world.
It is such a great pleasure to welcome Chris Garabedian to the show today. Chris is chairman and CEO of Xontogeny, which he founded in 2016 to support multiple promising technologies from early development through clinical proof of concept. In 2017, Chris joined Perceptive Advisors to develop their venture fund strategy and launched Perceptive Xontogeny Venture Fund in 2018 to support early stage companies seeded and incubated by Xontogeny and other ventures. Chris has a broad base of experience and a track record of success over his decades-long experience in the biopharma industry. He served as a president and CEO of Sarepta Therapeutics from 2011 to 2015, overseeing the turnaround of a company that's now a commercial stage leader in the genetic technology space after leading the development of the company's Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy program. Prior to Sarepta, Chris led corporate strategy at Celgene from 2007 2010. Prior to Celgene, Chris served in a number of global commercial and corporate development leadership roles at Gilead from 1997 to 2005. Chris serves on a number of boards of life sciences companies. He speaks at industry conferences on a wide range of important issues. Chris is also on the board of directors at MassBio and serves as a senior advisor for the Boston Consulting Group. Chris earned his BS in marketing from the University of Maryland. Welcome to the show, Chris. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mark. Pleasure to be participating in this.
So first question for you is really, kind of from the beginning, what led you to found Xontogeny? What was missing in the marketplace that you saw that drove you really to start the company?
Yeah, so the reason I started Xontogeny, and we describe it as an accelerator, where we seed and incubate early stage life science companies. And, I come with, more than 20 years of experience working at successful kind of biopharma operating companies. And one of the key learnings I had was that of the thousands of companies that are trying to move a drug technology through development, 90+% of them fail. Mm-hmm. And I feel that I was really fortunate to have worked for some of the best and brightest companies that the industry had seen. And I saw a lot of early stage companies make mistakes in early development, often that were unrecoverable, mm-hmm. and that otherwise would have been a very high potential, program. And so I realized that I could take that experience that I had and really partner and collaborate with scientific founders, entrepreneurs, first-time CEOs to play an active management role. And that was where the idea was born. And I wanted to build out a team, and I wanted to make seed investments. And so that led me to raising capital for the company. And that was kind of the start of the relationship with Perceptive to join the firm to help them launch their venture fund. And so so that's a little summary of what led me to start Xontogeny.
Really, really interesting. Thinking about the founders that you're working with, famous quote about all happy families are alike, but each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And I'm wondering, you're working with all these founders, all these scientific folks who want to commercialize their research. And, as you and your team are helping them, I'm wondering, what you find effective founders have in common that typically increases the likelihood that they're going to be successful.
Yeah, a corollary to that statement you read from Tolstoy is the success has many fathers and failure is an orphan, right? No one
Right.
wants to say they were involved with a failure, but the reality of it is that most of the industry is populated, with failure. When you have, 90% of products that fail to get FDA approval that are brought into development, it means that, almost all of us have been associated with failures along the way. And so what I look for in the entrepreneurs are a few key characteristics. So, number one, they usually come with a deep knowledge or understanding of their technology or the disease area in which that technology could be
Mhm.
applied. Some of them, have spent their doctoral programs or their training in specific areas, and so I like to see that expertise in an area that they could bring to a particular venture.
Mhm.
The second thing is, and this is probably true across all entrepreneurs, beyond life sciences, is that passion, that that will to take an idea
Mhm.
and do whatever it takes to see it through to success,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I think that that's important because when you're out there trying to convince others that you have something of value or you're trying to raise money, um, if the CEO and founder is not excited and passionate and believes that this really fits a certain unmet need or that this is a unique approach, it's really hard to get others to believe, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that passion is important. It also helps a founder weather through the more challenging trials that you're going to come across in turning a company into a success, and they inevitably are going to be there. And I think when you don't have a founder involved that has that level of passion and that persistence and perseverance, uh, somebody else who's brought in from the outside can often say, I think I have a better gig, that I can go to,
Mhm.
that it doesn't look as bad as this looks right now. So I think that that's a quality that we look for. And then the third I would say is the right dose of humility, right?
Mhm.
And that is that um, the best entrepreneurs that we interact with are those that realize what they know and realize where they need help,
Mhm.
right? And I think the best outcomes are often that collaboration, right, between bringing two sets of skills and disciplines together to drive success.
Mhm.
And a simpler way to describe that, just generally in the life sciences or drug development arena, is that uh, I believe that the skills that produce a really great research scientist who might be able to generate some great uh, experiments and publish those experiments and apply the scientific method with great rigor is a very different skill set, albeit still important, but a very different skill set than being a good drug developer that understands how to move a technology through the drug development regulatory process, right?
Mhm.
And being able to understand how to craft and design a program that leads to success in a industry that lives with 90% failure rates.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
so that's kind of how I see the coming together of those two disciplines.
Sure. So interesting. And maybe that humility comes also when you're thinking about, well, the founder has to realize that he or she doesn't have that experience or that skill set and be willing
Yep.
to kind of cede that role to somebody who's done it, done it successfully.
Yep.
So, we're thinking, we're in this crazy situation, obviously, right now with the pandemic, and that's unleashed a flood of efforts to develop a vaccine. And I'm wondering, as an industry expert, thinking about the medium to long term, how you feel the pandemic could shape program development.
Yeah. Well, I think it's serving as a catalyst, right, for some of the industry trends that were already in place,
Hmm.
but maybe to borrow a phrase of vaccines, it needed a booster shot, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that uh, you know the shutdown or work from home, remote based, right, need to get work done and to maintain some continuity of drug and technology development has really accelerated some of those trends. And you know, and so the FDA had already been appealing to industry and sponsors of programs to, hey, read our guidelines, listen to our policy statements, and understand that we're encouraging industry to come to us, right, with creative trial designs, with novel endpoints, with utilization of new ways of collecting data, real world evidence, RWE as it's referred to, or PROs, patient reported outcomes. These are things that the FDA has been talking about for a while, and there hasn't been as much embrace from industry, right? And they've kind of stuck to the old ways of capturing data at clinical sites once every month or 3 months in a clinical trial. And I think this is boosting and accelerating some of those trends to have companies rethink. When for a few months you couldn't capture data from patients in your trial, or you couldn't enroll new patients, it really forced companies to rethink their future strategy, or if they were about to embark on a clinical study. So I think that all of this has been for good for the industry. I mean, you started with vaccines. I think what the efforts around vaccines or therapeutics to address COVID specifically is kind of emblematic of what's happening broadly across the industry, which is, okay, all of the important constituents are coming together, whether it be regulators, right, industry partners, clinicians, and researchers are coalescing to figure out how to solve a problem. And I think a lot of us who've been around industry for a while are looking at it and say, wow, how amazing things can work successfully when everybody's affected, and there's a real concern about health risks, right, globally.
Right.
And so I think that has I think reinvigorated people in thinking what our industry can achieve and what it can accomplish by working together. And I think coming out of the other side of this, I think that's going to apply to other areas beyond COVID vaccine and treatments. But hey, why can't we address important rare diseases in the same way, or cancer in the same way, or other areas where we haven't seen as much innovation. The number of companies that have been able to move products through early development and into the clinic, or pivoting their strategy on a drug that's in development, or even a commercial product, and repurposing it, has been so swift that it's made everybody kind of look and say, why aren't we doing this type of behavior, and showing this type of creativity across other kind of conditions and disease areas?
It's really interesting. Such a different, like a positive result of this, and kind of a model potentially, as you point out, that could be applied in different areas. And now I want you to think about, the different key services that your firm offers its scientific founders that are particularly important to helping them move successfully through the program development life cycle to hopefully approval. I mean, you've touched on some of them and the skill sets, but it would be great, I think, for our listeners to learn a little bit more specifically about the type of services you're offering your scientific founders.
Yep. So it kind of goes back to how can we adopt a different model that is friendlier to founders and entrepreneurs, but that leads to better outcomes and success of taking a technology through development. And we do that in a few ways. So first, we will typically work with an early stage company and say, okay, you've generated some interesting early data. Maybe they've identified a lead asset, and they've filed some patents, and so they have some novel intellectual property around a technology. And let's say they've taken a few of those leads and put them through, maybe it's a in vitro cell line screen, or maybe they've done a rodent model, and we look at that early data and we assess how promising it is. And that is what ultimately determines whether we want to get involved or not, right? Based on the mechanism of action, the proof of that mechanism, the early data on some novel approaches that affect that, that target that they're going after. And then we focus as much, if not more, attention on, okay, what next? All right, how do we take the early promise of this data and harness it and amplify it, right? So that every successive experiment that we do gets us closer and closer to understanding the drug-like characteristics of that molecule, right? Or drug asset.
Mm-hmm.
And how can we effectively develop it so that it leads to what our kind of North Star is a positive clinical trial data set that is essentially its proof of concept that this is working in patients how we intended it to, right? That's our guiding, end game. And we know that they'll need to do pivotal studies after that, and that there's a lot more investment, et cetera. But that's where the industry starts to look at an asset and say, wow, this looks like it's going to get to approval. Before that, it's just we think it'll work, but we're not sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're doing everything we can. So I have a team of industry experts, drug developers. One of my R&D partners has, over 30 years experience working for companies like Merck and, Amgen and, Merck Serono, and helped incubate companies at another VC and was a head of R&D at a biotech. And so, and he's a medicinal chemist by training, and, has led early development programs. I was fortunate to have worked at the Gileads and the Celgenes and been a public company CEO myself. And so, we bring expertise where we can provide that oversight and that direction. And then we lay out the plan with the early stage company and say, this is what we want to do, bringing our expertise to the table. This is what we think it will cost. We will support those de-risking experiments or that, optimization of a lead asset, or we'll help you tie up the patents, right? And whatever's needed, or we'll complete that license agreement that you need and pay the upfront fee that's required, or whatever it is. And so we provide almost like a shadow management team, right, to that oftentimes first-time CEO, right, entrepreneur, scientific founder. And we provide that seed capital, importantly. But, I'd say that that's all important, but I think what we offer is a model that continues to figure out how to advance the program. I have, by joining Perceptive Advisors and having a venture fund where we can deploy larger financing rounds in the form of a Series A, which it could be anywhere from 8 to 10 million to 15 to 20 or 25 million, whatever's needed to get that company to the next value inflection. And we do that by not charging, right, for our executive, right, involvement.
Mm-hmm.
We take that in the form of common equity from that early seed investment, right, where we start and collaborate early on, and then we figure out how to maximize the value before we take that Series A round, right, of 10, 15. And what that means is that the founders and entrepreneur and early equity holders get to retain more of the company post that Series A round, right, than taking a larger amount upfront. Or oftentimes there's a lot of these larger VC funds that kind of dictate how much they want to put into a company that's driven by how much ownership they want to have out of the gate, right? And so I think it's a combination of the entrepreneur who interacts with us believes that we bring a unique set of skills that increase the probability of success, but we're also reinforcing that by applying an efficient use of capital and the right sized, right, investment strategy, so we don't overcapitalize these companies. And we actually provide that mentorship and guidance to a first-time CEO, where, and even if they've been a serial CEO, they often appreciate the expertise we bring. And so I think it's that combination of factors that is why companies that we interact with want us involved. And so I hope that sums up where you were getting with the question.
Absolutely. Really innovative model. The way you've described it is very clear too. So thanks for walking that through, Chris. And the last question I have for you is thinking about, for scientists and entrepreneurs who are who are interested in translating their science to a viable commercial product, who may be listening and are familiar with you and your website and your company and are listening to the podcast. How should they begin to prepare, and what kind of mindset should they have as they start to think about working with a company like yours?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I have a different perspective on that than what you'll hear from a lot of venture capitalists out there. You've probably heard the phrase, what are the top 3 things you look for, right? And they'll say, team, and team are the top 3, right? Like, is it, and I actually deviate from that. And I say, well, look, I'm going to take responsibility to make sure we do things the right way, right? I come from the operating world, right? I'm used to taking an active management role, and I want the raw talent there. I want the raw, right, skill sets, right? But I don't need them to be ready to be a NASDAQ listed public company CEO, right? And so I'm looking for those characteristics we talked about earlier, but I'm really focused on, why are they excited about this? What is the science, right? How are you going to apply it? What is your thinking about this? And I also would encourage them to reach out. The earlier the better. They don't need to come to us when I need to have the perfect pitch deck, and I need to have a board of directors that I can get some people who I can put on a slide, and I need to have some consultants who would be ready to jump in as the C-suite. And those are things we are less concerned about. And in fact, we might feel like detracts from our ability to work with an early stage company. So we want that entrepreneur, or if it's 2 founders or 3, to reach out and say, look, we like your model. Let's talk about our idea and how we would work together to make this successful. And they can do that by either submitting something through our website, which is Xontogeny.com. My email is chris@Xontogeny.com. And we have a team and a system to put those opportunities through our diligence process. And what we try to do is give good feedback. We try to be relatively quick in giving that feedback. And even if we have to say no, because we have to say no to the majority of things we look at, we try to leave them with the best advice we can give them to allow them to find success, elsewhere. And so, we encourage that. I would only say that if they reach out, try to share something non-confidential that we can at least assess and evaluate before we have a first call. But we are open and willing to listen to any ideas and figure out how to turn an idea into a success. And we also interact with folks who are further advanced. Maybe they've raised a seed round. Maybe they have a management team. Maybe they're ready for that Series A round. We can still evaluate those, and I can just write checks from our venture fund if they're looking for 15 or 20 million. But again, the earlier they get involved with us, the better. But we can pretty much help them, with our various strategies and financing mechanisms.
Well, Chris Garabedian, thank you so much. I mean, really interesting. Chairman, CEO of Xontogeny, an innovative company, interesting model, really encouraging, optimistic, you bringing your expertise as you sketched out, and really, saying to the scientists, like you focus on what you're really good at. And we'll provide this insight in areas that you might not be as familiar with everyone having the same goal, at the end of the day. So really, really interesting. Thanks for sharing that with us today.
Mark, I enjoyed it. Thanks for inviting me on to this podcast, and much appreciated.
This is When Science Speaks, a new web series profiling innovative and interesting people working in science and technical fields, from academia to industry to the nonprofit world. We explore how to be a powerhouse advocate for science and your research, how to advance your career in meaningful ways that make you happy, and how to push back on the ongoing assault on science and other related issues of interest happening in the world.